tabletop role-playing games in education are not just about math and reading. They can cover a wide variety of topics. So I am Steph Campbell. If you've been coming to the other talks, you will get like this slide and the next slide, like just like multiple times.
So many times. We're going to know each other so well if you only want to know 4 things about each of us.
Right. So I run the TTRPG Kids website. It has over 500 articles about tabletop role-playing games for all ages. So this is for kids, teens, adults of any age. And it is meant to be like I can play with my 6-year-old and also still have fun with the game myself. There's a giant section on education on there, and everything is just like a free resource because I like free libraries and wanted to provide that. I am a former airbag engineer and engineering professor. Those are pictures of a couple of my patents.
And you designed the airbags that are in my car.
Yes. So I wouldn't recommend testing them out. However, I am confident that they would protect your knees.
Wow. So, now I feel real weird.
Like,
I designed them and they're filled with rocks.
I mean, it's an explosive device. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I blew stuff up out in the deserts of Utah in order to test them. It was like the most fun part is hitting the button. Well, you need it out in the desert so if something goes really wrong, there's nobody around. So there's an airbag plant full of like explosive devices. So you gotta have it out in a valley in the middle of the desert. I'm also the parent of a 6-year-old child. So got the engineering professor and the 6-year-old parent. So I'm kind of like on the two ends of the age spectrum in terms of the content that I typically manage. Because I make stuff for my kid, and then I have also made stuff for the engineering classes that I taught.
So, my name is Jennifer Genova. I am a middle school teacher, theater director, educational researcher, gaming enthusiast, D&D after school club runner, and generally love talking about teaching. I love talking about instructional design, curriculum design, and non-traditional curriculum is like where I live with my soul. And I love working with teachers and people who care about getting good, high quality materials in front of kids to improve their lives.
So, with that, we want to learn about what you all are into. What is your favorite non-D20 system? So it can use different dice, tickets, coins, like little tokens, cards, whatever it is. Not a D20. What is your favorite system? And it can be real simple.
Oh, that and Vampire Interactives, they conflicted of rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors. I have reviewed a couple games that use rock, paper, scissors, and I love them because I'm like, hey, kiddo, let's play test a new game. And we can play the entire game in about 10 minutes. It takes 0 time to teach the mechanics. And then I'm like, sweet, I have enough to write my review for the week.
Yep.
And I love the really simple ones. Rock, paper, scissors is a great one. What else?
I have a couple.
Mm-hmm.
The PIP system is the one that I developed for, so that's kind of my go-to in my brain if I'm trying to wrap my head around. I'll convert it into what I would for the PIP system, and then I'm like, okay, I can understand this.
Mm-hmm.
The Dread system is also really awesome because that's Jenga Tower, so which is really awesome.
Yeah. What else? Do you have a favorite system?
Just generic card games.
Okay.
Oh, I love that. Yep. I love role-playing games that use a 52 card deck because I feel like if I want to bring that into a classroom, kids immediately understand what that is and it takes away a lot. Yeah.
So
I love deck games.
I made a game where you use a deck of cards to make a train. And so you lay them all out in a row and you flip them over one at a time. You're going through the train cars, and depending on what the card is, it tells you what train car you're in.
I love that so much.
I've made 4 of them because I really liked making the first one.
Great.
And I sort of like, there are multiple special interests kind of tagged into the same thing here.
I love that.
I love using cards as like scene randomization in particular. Like, it's very fun with that. Do you have a favorite? Nice. Yeah. The deck builders, like oh, what's it called? Dominion?
Yes, I was gonna say, are you
Yeah.
talking about Dominion?
Yeah.
Holy Grail deck
I
building.
there's like 3 or 4 boxes that look very similar to each other, and I was like, the names were like blending together in my brain. So Dominion is like, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think my favorite, well, some others, thankfully my friend staff is not about to make fun of me, but if any of you happen to see us at PAX East or Unplugged, my favorite non D20 system is Arium Create by Adept Icarus Games. It is so good. Yeah, that is something that you could bring into a classroom and do nothing. And it runs itself. It is a collaborative storytelling game with mechanics for managing disagreement and promoting consensus building and frustration tolerance and all of that. It's like it's and I'm convinced that at some point he is going to take out some sort of order of no contact on me, because every time I'm at a convention like this, I'm like, everyone needs to go get Arium Create right now. And he's like, oh, he's gonna be like, okay. We've never met. I have nothing to do with his gaming studio. But it's just chef's kiss. You can retheme it to be about whatever you want. I'm gonna use it for my final project next year.
Nice.
To
You would actually love that.
build a utopian society based off of cultural elements and societal elements from all of the units that we study throughout the year. Anyway, I'm so sorry.
No,
That was
please.
ADHD.
This is us geeking out about our favorite systems. I think I really like decision trees, where it's like the choose your own adventure stuff. Like that's what I've been making lately, because I've kind of been like just really into like that in other games. And then I really like deck builders, but my kid has a hard time with the cards sometimes. So I made one that is like an absolute chaos deck builder kind of thing, but it's like tokens in a cup. And I've been having like a lot of fun with that. Like it's just, but it is essentially a deck builder game that you reshuffle every time. It's just like different, like instead of it being a burrito, it's not a taco kind of thing, like with the same ingredients.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
You could even say like, maybe a smoothie.
Right. It's like, is it a fruit salad or a smoothie? It's the same stuff, different format. So, right. And gotta use the mouse. There we go. Okay, so when we're looking at, so we've listed a whole bunch of different systems, and now there's a whole bunch of different systems that fit a whole bunch of different subjects. So I'm gonna go through a few of these. So this one right here, Inspiriles, teaches sign language. So in order to cast magic, you have to sign actual words and letters.
It's amazing.
And so the guy that makes this, awesome dude.
Our heart.
Yeah.
Can I like?
Please geek out.
Okay, so the other when Over Isles comes out because Under Isles is already out. When the next Inspirals comes out, there is going to be a curriculum pack that is going to be available that my research partner and I wrote. So Inspirals, that's the teaching pack that we've been working on with Rich. So this Inspirals really kicked off all of the things that are happening now, because it's where we started really analyzing what happens when we do this kind of work in kids in a real way, beyond just saying, hey, they really like it and they were way more motivated to learn. We really started operationalizing that research and like, what are they doing? How do we know that they're doing it? Under what circumstances, etc. Like really started researching it was because of Inspiriles. And Rich is an incredibly wonderful man who is such an inclusive, giving soul and just a wonderful human being.
Like total just.
Oh,
I love it. So this one, it's very clearly got like an educational base, and it's so integrated into the game. Like everything from the mechanics to the story.
Yep.
And like I started using this with my kid when he was really little because I was like, we're gonna learn a little bit of sign language. We can do kind of the alphabet and then also dinosaur, and Spider-Man. So like Spider-Man is literally like Spider-Man.
I love that
and
so
like
much.
some of the superheroes. So he's like, oh, I'm gonna do Spider-Man fire, and I'm like, please go ahead and tell me how you do flamethrower webs. I don't know, like it's just fun, but he remembers it. This one right here is the Liverstein Living Museum, and this is a historical LARP about doing reports on historical figures. So you dress up as the character, and you're going to be like a statue in the museum. And when the teacher comes around, you're going to act things out. You maybe go interact with the other statues. This is so like a lot of times we'll talk about like tabletop role playing games. It's all going to be on the table. This one's more of a LARP style, but there are dice rolls involved. There is like role playing elements, so it's kind of like that in between. But it's a lot more interactive than doing like a book report. This one right here, the God Corpse, is a D&D module, but it takes place inside the fallen body of a god. But it's huge. And so it teaches about anatomy. Because as you're going through, the map is an anatomy map. And there's little things in there, like in the cranial cavity, you gotta fight mind players, because like what else you can have in the brain, kind of thing. Or like there's stuff on the skin that look like little skin mites and stuff like that. Or which it gets a little gross, but it's very educational, and there's like a blurb about what that part is like. Down here, these are some of the ones that I've made that teach about like problem solving. This one, someone commissioned a game on space stuff, and that was the prompt. So I mean, I had fun with that. I am a massive space nerd, and so I'm like just kind of going through here, and then this is maybe a third of the games that are in the TTRPGs Teach Game Jam. So this here times 3. And most of these are not purely math and reading and writing. It is getting into topics for science, history, languages, etc. So what we're going to do for the rest of this is talk about what we have seen, experienced using the classroom, and then answer like your questions about non-writing and math-based games, or if there is a game that's based in writing and math, how do you draw out the other facets of that game, so that way you're getting into like social emotional skills, or maybe it's writing, but then you're also looking at learning other languages and different ways to kind of spin. So, what kind of games have you used that spin into different topics?
So I love a game that I can rescan really easily. A lot of history games that already exist are a lot of combat and war. That's a lot of stuff. Or they're alternate histories. And the thing that gets really dicey, alternative histories. So like we're replaying World War II and there's a possibility that the bad guys win. And I'm kind of like, that gets really weird in my classroom. So I love a game, a mechanic set that is very easy that I can reskin. So one of the things that I often go back to is For the Queen. Have any of you played For the Queen? Yes. It's just a series of questions on cards. And so that is something that I can really easily reframe a little bit. So for example, when I teach feudalism, I have 4 social classes, and you are all going on a journey with the queen, and that's great, but like your role, instead of just coming up with sort of any sort of character, you have to demonstrate understanding of the similarities and differences in lifestyle and perspective of different classes in a feudal hierarchical social pyramid, which is a big thing that we want our kids to do. It is very quick to adjust those questions or sometimes just take stuff out that isn't going to work. And that role playing game becomes a phenomenal sort of frame for a really good class discussion. I also love Kids on Bikes, Kids on Brooms system. I think that is really intuitive. Your better dice is something that you are better at because you have the option to get a better number. But if you might get lucky. You might be more likely to explode if you get if you roll the highest thing on your dice. I find that kids immediately understand that if they have the typical RPG set visually, it's very easy for them to figure out which one is which. And plus, they all like being able to be like, I explode, blah, blah, blah. And that's also easy. I like to keep a system in my social studies class that I can teach once and then we revisit a bunch of times. So the more setting agnostic something can be, the better. One that I often take and will reskin is Lasers and Feelings. That's very easy.
That's a good one.
That's so easy.
Okay, I need information.
So Lasers and Feelings is a system where you have two stats. One is
Lasers.
one is lasers, one is feelings. It can also be anything, right?
It's been hacked and reskinned
Oh,
like so many different ways. There's, I think, probably 5 or 6 of the games that I've reviewed on the site are Lasers and Feelings hacks because it's just like so flexible.
It's so easy. Yeah. So like I could have one be diplomacy and aggression, done. And instead of people, you are representatives of countries at the League of Nations, done. We've figured it out.
Yeah. You pick a number that's like your lucky number.
Yeah.
And one stat is if you roll below that, then that is like so like one of the ones I did was princess and power. And so you have like princess skills and you have superpower skills. And so if you pick your number here, if you roll above that, that is going to succeed for a princess skill. If you roll below that, that's going to succeed for a power skill. So if you pick your number here, you're going to have a better chance of like activating your superpowers. But if you pick a number here, you get a better chance of activating your princess powers.
Right. And that's a great visual for if you have role players who are not used to role playing, having that visual for them, like, okay, it's 1 through 6. My lucky number, I think that I am more princess than I am superhero. So 4 is my lucky number. And, that means that I'm less likely to be successful doing a superpower, more likely to be successful doing princess. That makes sense. And anything like that's an opposite, like it's a system like that is incredible to do. And you don't get bogged down in crunch. So you can build a fiction that really supports a learning goal.
Yeah.
When a lot of times, and Steph, please feel free to side tackle me if I get too off of the side. A lot of times games, when they want to be called educational, they will lean on math and reading when what they're really telling you is that their rule book is incomprehensible and that most of the time you are calculating stat outcomes. Which, now, I'm a gal who loves an incomprehensible rule book. I got a shelf full of them. I come from the land of Cthulhu. I love that stuff. Call of Cthulhu character creation, it violates the Geneva Convention, I swear. But like it's something that like kids can't master. And also, just because a child has to read in order to play the game does not mean that game is teaching reading.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm looking for a game for my social studies class, I look for a system that is easy and applicable to any fiction, and then I will build the fiction. I very, very rarely can I find a game that, like, I find a lot of games in beautiful historical settings, and sometimes that's totally fine for whatever reason. But, like, if I want to teach a specific content topic, I'm looking for a system that kids is really accessible to kids. Deck builders are a great genre of games for kids. Sorry, I don't mean to point to you like, I'm being very rude. I'll do the Disney point, which is always a whole hand. Um, because like a non-role player understands, because card games are such like a part of culture. If I have a hand of cards in my hand, these are the things that I'm able to do. Like, I can't do it if I don't have it in front of me, right? That is something that is very intuitive. And so games that go through that are gold mines for bringing something into a classroom.
Yeah. One of the systems that I really like is Caltrap Core. It's a D4 dice pool, and you just see how many successes you have. So the more like bonuses that you get, the more dice you get. So if you have done your research and you have come up with a creative idea and you have a person helping you, you maybe get like 2 or 3 extra dice, and then you just roll it and see how many succeed. That is super simple and easy to see in front of you. There's no modifiers being added, and it's just you need 2 successes to pass.
We use D8s, but we did the same thing.
Right, exactly. And I also love myself a good roll a D6 and see if it passes or fails. This has 2 +1 modifiers that you can potentially add to a roll, and that is it. And they're very limited because you have to pay a very precious resource, so you have like very limited energy in order to activate it. So it's more about risk reward than it is about crunch. So do you mind if I pop over to the TTRPG Kids site to show a couple articles?
No.
Okay. Because I feel like that's going to demonstrate one of the things.
We love demonstrating the things.
Okay. This is how I've been keeping track of where I need to be, is actually the article on my website that has all the links.
Yeah.
So it's been my... Okay. Oh, no! It'll be fun. So I made a bunch of like thought experiment kind of classroom settings for various subjects where it was something that either somebody had asked me about, or I was like, oh, what if we did try and make this? And I made it into like a little article series on here. So they're not like published games, but it shows how you can make a game and why you need to break it down the way you need to in order to make it actually intentionally educational. So this shows like how to structure it, but I'm going to jump down here. So this is an example TTRPG social studies lesson for middle school kids. So this is going to be teens. The context for this is a live example of passing a bill after covering the process from the educational materials in class. This one has a time limit of 120 minutes split into, so it's going to be 2 classes. So there's going to be a recess period in the middle, like you would normally have in a bill passing process, where students can potentially go do research between classes. So this would be like an end of the semester project, like before a break or something like that. Most of the other ones I have like a hard 50-minute time limit, but for this one I kind of extended a little. The goals here are going to be, so this is summarized from the Michigan K-12 Standards of Social Studies Civics section. Listed here. I'm from Michigan, so it's like my default standard that I go to. Understand the law proposal process at the federal level, and understand the economic, social, etc. factors at play in politics. This is a touchy thing in classes. We're not going to get into it like in terms of the discussion of modern day things, and we don't want to get into that. This is about what is the process. So our mechanics here are going to be homebrew character roleplay focused with group dice rolling mechanics to simulate voting. And the lesson is going to be to create a cast of characters in a fantasy world political system reflective of the U.S. political system and watch the process a bill takes before it can become a law. If you do this kind of thing with an actual real world example, it's going to get heated and going to go into places that you don't want it to go into.
Yes.
But putting it into a fantasy setting, What would get read aloud to the class is, you are in the country Democranor, and you are all elected officials or topic experts who will be participating in the evaluation process of a proposed bill. Democranor is known for several things, including the Wizard College, which recently was renovated after there was a mishap with a student's in development extreme weather shielding spell. The nearby protected Dragon Sanctuary and National Park, which has been beset by a series of vandals since its establishment, and its position as a trading and adventuring hub at the center of the continent under its slogan, All Roads Meet at Democranor. So we have put some seeds for world building in here that we have not fully fleshed out, but they're all pretty, like, you can tell how this might come into play. Like, we've got economics hints, we've got hints about like what's going on with this wizard college. Like, I feel like there's a history there. I feel like there's a history going on with the national park and the dragon sanctuary. So you will each play a particular part in the evaluation of a bill that's being proposed, the implementation of a magic tax to be applied for any and all magic use and items within Democranor. And so the entirety of the, like, all of the students are going to be assigned different roles, and then they're going to need to pick. So we'll have like one president, we'll have House committee members, Senate committee members, subject matter experts, and then there's like some optional roles depending on how big your class is. They need to pick a name and pronouns, a background from a list, like magical shop owner, career politician, dragon researcher, retired adventurer, pet shop owner, male person, etc. And then a key motivation for a stance or goal. Like, they may want to reduce business tax or increase school funding, improve tourism, etc. And then we now have a great frame for talking about a hypothetical situation that's not going to really get touchy,
Right.
in the same way as if you tried to discuss something in the real world. And then we have our dice rolls that are going to simulate voting, and you can go through the whole process and explain what's going on through the tabletop RPG, and you can get really into it, and they're going to world build as they go,
Right.
because they're going to be like, well, I don't want, like, there's fund or defund the Dragon Sanctuary. Okay, why would you want to defund the Dragon Sanctuary? Do you have a personal backstory? When you get brought up to talk as a subject matter expert, what is your argument going to be? And they're going to be thinking about that and getting really immersed in it and focusing on that and not getting, like, charged on other things.
And they also have to think about a goal that is not related to how they actually feel. So they really have to interrogate a position without, like, threatening their own ego, which, especially for middle school, is like such a big deal. Like, a lot of them are having, it's the first time really in their sort of social development that they have a political opinion. It is most often directly reflecting that of their parents or directly reflecting that of the opposite of the parents, depending on where they are in the sort of like teenager adolescent spectrum. But putting it into a fantasy setting takes away that pressure and that barrier of like we're not talking about immigration now, we're talking about the Dragon Sanctuary. We're not talking about this weird thing that my parents are like really upset about, but I don't understand and I feel weird about it. We're talking about a wizard college. It doesn't matter.
And there's so many elements of like perspective taking and everything.
Yes.
But then you're going to get all of the vocabulary. You're going to experience the internal workings of it. You roll a d6 with like roles representing yeses and nos from like the members of Congress that you have to sway.
Yeah.
And there's going to be like modifiers based on if you have made a compelling argument. So you can kind of like adjust where it's going to go. You go through, like, I've got all the steps here, but this is like this is a pretty standard like role-playing exercise that you would do in the class, but then putting it in the frame of the fantasy element works out. You've got dice rolls. It is a game.
Yes.
But like, you learn so much from this. Like, I remember my social studies classes, and when we went over the bill proposal process, I think that maybe like 3 students in the class really understood it. And when like the testing on it was our teacher was not impressed. We will say with like the test result, and it's you can't really get and understand this by just reading steps out of a book,
Right.
and be expected to remember it later in life. Like you need to kind of experience it, and so that's what this gives you. But we're not distracting from any of the material.
No.
By taking it and complicating it with excessive mechanics and actually a lot of world building. The students do all the world building in their head and through the discussions that they have. We just gave them some seeds to work with.
And what this does is, what I use a lot of role playing in my class when I need to get kids to go through a process, like a historically relevant process, or I need them to understand a transitional time in history of like why we see a shift. So I would do role play around like the trans-Saharan trade. I would do a role play game of Silk Road trade. I would do a role play game of kids having to convince. I'm a sucker for getting the band together story. You know what I mean? Like I love when like we have to get the band back together. Like let's go get everyone, because it is one thing to read how a bill becomes a law and know those steps and be able to list them. It is another thing entirely to have walked through that process and realize that like there's a reason 97% of legislation that is proposed in the United States never becomes a law.
Yeah. Like
there's a reason,
like how many ways it gets shut down.
Right, and how many places
and
how much debate and how things have to change, and then the strategery of the strategery of having to be like, okay, we're gonna ask for 25 things, knowing that Senator Herschenfer is on the Ways and Means Committee and is going to strike 10 because he's up for election next year and he has to look like he's pro-austerity. We only want 8 things, but we're at, like, all of that is such a part of our real world. Kids do not understand if all they do is follow the flow chart that's in every civics textbook since the dawn of our nation.
Yeah. So, as long as it is not getting into actual real world politics, then yes.
No, it's about teaching and how.
Yes,
feel
100%.
about the fact that I feel like I'm loving that putting stuff like this into learning. I feel like we're putting human emotions, real
experiences,
skills,
yes,
back into critical thinking skills into the hands of the people, the kids, our future,
right?
And I think that's important.
So my take on this, if you look at how learning has progressed, like humans, like long term have learned through oral storytelling, and tabletop RPGs are kind of a return to form, and like how our brains have worked has been through experience and oral storytelling.
Yes.
And then we moved into like writing and this like flood of media options that like how long have our brains had to adjust to that? So like this is kind of that going back to here and here, because your brain doesn't always differentiate between like that it is fiction, so it will release brain chemicals as if you're actually experiencing the thing. Like you're going to feel frustration when your proposal gets shot down for the 3rd time in a row, and that is going to trigger this off, and you're going to have some level of that experience, even if it's like 25% of what it would be to experience it in real life, or 10% or something. Like it is going to lock in these two parts that are like more core to like the way our brain works and historically has been like conditioned to respond. So
right. And I think when we think about like the ways in which like there's learning to take a test and satisfy a class requirement, and then there's understanding, right? And I think, especially in social studies, for a very, very, very long time, the focus in social studies education has been the children need to know the stuff about the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think that you should be aware of the major events that have impacted the world and brought it to this point, of course. But aware is not really the goal.
It's not
Like,
actually understanding
no,
it.
like
So.
you can tell me if you say to me like, well, after the power vacuum after World War II set off the Cold War. Of the power vacuum, the loss of the empires of the 19th century, Britain, France, Portugal, etc. That sort of renegotiation of global power created the reorientation of nations around the Iron Curtain, created the Cold War. That's great, right? Cool. Really getting into what that means takes more than just reading about it passively. Mm-hmm. And so, like, one of the first like role playing experiences I ever did was in my student teaching, and I didn't even realize until just now that it was truly a role play game. Is I had the kids redo the Treaty of Versailles in a way that they think could have prevented the rise of Hitler and the collapse of the Weimar government, because when we do especially social studies in this static way, we lose. It creates a sense of inevitability in these events, and that I think can create a sort of like fatalistic nihilism in children of like, well, it's all sort of just decided, and that there were no actors and that no one ever had any agency. And I think in tabletop role-playing games, and I'm speaking specifically to social studies because I do not teach other subjects and I don't really have the positionality to bring that up, but I think it comes into a lot of other subjects, especially when you're talking about ethical considerations and like what are the implications of decisions in the medical field? What are the implications of decisions with technology? What are the implications of decisions that are made at the Treaty of Versailles, right? And like, how do those bear out? And that can lead us to thinking about the shades of gray in other historical decisions. And much like we're putting our How a Bill Becomes a Law game in a fantasy world, putting our international diplomacy negotiation game very far in the past can open up and reduce barriers to having very, very challenging conversations that we hope are also informing the way that our students look at the world as it is now. Yeah. So yeah, it was wild watching, thinking of all the things that the kids did to try and figure out how they could prevent the collapse of the Weimar Republic was really interesting. And then, of course, you have the best kid ever who raises their hand and says, well, without, if we didn't know that it led to the rise of Nazism, would we think that the Weimar Republic was worth saving? And then I was like, I've never been happier than I am, but I've been teaching all of 17 minutes and do not know how to handle this question. Yeah. Sorry, that was my like social studies tangent. I'm very, very, very passionate about effective social studies education. I think role-playing games really gets you there.
I pulled up the social studies examples on purpose because I know it ties into what you have been working on. So,
jam.
Yeah. I did another one for like middle school. So I did like high school, middle school, and like elementary school, like what would typically be seen in social studies.
Yeah.
So like the like deterministic element gets kind of weird when you're looking at past stuff, and you also don't want them like messing with the timeline.
No.
And then like getting lost in the weeds about like, oh, well, I'm just going to like step on a butterfly and XY, and get silly about it. So with this one, it's about identifying and interpreting events between historical sequence timelines, interpreting and predicting cause and effect of key historical moments, and discussing the perspective of a key historical figure. I used a Rules Light D12 based system. And this is time travel to stop Timey Tim from siphoning chronal energy off of Marie Curie by locating where she has gone missing in the timeline and helping her to get back into the correct time and place. So they're given a timeline. So in this one, it's like, we're going to reuse this format multiple times. So there's like a character creation that you will reuse this character 7 times throughout the semester to save different historical figures. So this one has a session 0. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but what you're given is students are given a timeline. And so this has like 1905, Henry Becquerel and Pierre Curie receive a split Nobel Prize in physics. The first textbook describing treatment of cancers in 1920, and then 1965, Maria Goeppert-Mayer becomes the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in physics. What the timeline should be is they win it like 2 years earlier, and Marie Curie is a part of the team. She becomes the first woman to win a new Nobel Peace Prize, or first woman in France to earn a PhD in physics, etc. And it shows how this may have like delayed other events. And so like that's the first thing. Right. And then that tells you where in the timeline she's missing. So you need it in order to progress the story, but you are also learning about cause and effect and seeing it as an example. And then you need to go to that time period and go to the right time and place. So you need to look up where she was at, what she was doing, where you might find her, who she probably was interacting with, and go interview Pierre Curie about like what her life was like, so you can kind of track her down. How long has she been missing and whatnot? So you find out about her, and then like of course you gotta have like a little fight scene with Timey Tim, who is just kind of a jerk, and it's like ha ha ha, and like gets away at the last minute because you're gonna have to track him down 7 more times in the semester. So, but like that's a good one where you are resetting the timeline, and your reward at the end is you get to fight Timey Tim, and the teacher is going to be making funny voices and dancing around in a weird hat, pretending to be Timey Tim at the front of class, and then like, you'll never catch me, and then like releases the burst of time energy and runs off the door, and then teacher comes back and is like, okay, what did we learn? Is Marie Curie back in the timeline? And like, you're still learning so much, and it's getting into interview skills, it's getting into problem solving research skills but it's all integrated into the game, and you have to do it in order to progress. There's the elementary school one is about using a map key and directions and understanding the concept of national symbols like an animal or flower. It's basically a giant fetch quest, but it's going around, and in order to find everything, you have to use clues from like the national flag or this like ancient like story, maybe like the state motto or something like that, in order to find the mer jackalope and bring it a magic potion made from the state flower kind of thing, and like how that legend may have influenced these national symbols. So there's like really cool ways that you can integrate it, and adding the story doesn't take a whole lot of time.
No.
It's maybe like a couple minutes.
It's actually the fun part.
Right. But it's only like a couple minutes of class time, and it gets everyone engaged, and you are bam, 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 because it's like, okay, we have interviewed people. What are we doing next? And like students will raise their hand because it's part of the story, instead of everyone sitting there and being like, okay, you can tell me, I don't know.
Right.
And it dragging along. I honestly, like, from what I've seen, it shortens the class time.
Yeah.
By adding in like just a couple extra minutes of the fun stuff.
Well, it's going slow to go fast, right? Like, you have to take some time, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday. You really have to set up a classroom that is ready for role-playing games. And that's having a strong sense of community, a sense of trust, a sense of accountability, having strong norms, having like a distributed leadership system where they're not just looking for you to be the one that makes a decision. And in order to have that, you can then have all of these moments, right? Where your kids are feeling free to be asking questions of you, asking questions of the story, to be really engaging critically with the material with which they're presented. And what is also amazing about this, right? You notice as we've gone through this, we are not talking a lot about systems. We're not talking a lot about stat blocks. We're not talking a lot about that crunch because the system is the ramp to the learning, right? And you need, like building a ramp for any sort of accessibility, right? It needs to be only as long and as high as to get the people safely from one spot to the other, right?
So then, like, kind of tying that into the not just math and reading
Right.
kind of element is we are not focusing on having them read a big tome
No.
or do a ton of crunchy math to get to this. If you're focusing solely on doing math, you can pick a game like Arithmagine, which
Yeah.
it is a story-based game that the mechanic is using cards, and then it's where do you place the operational symbol in between the cards in order to get really close to the target number. That's great for teaching math
Beautiful.
using a story, but like that's the purpose of that one. It's supposed to be kind of crunchy and math thinky, but for like this, I do not want it math thinky because that's not the purpose of the assignment. So
Right.
we don't want the crunch in that. And so it's mostly story based with like a D6 roll or pulling a card out of a deck in order to facilitate that. And that's about it.
Right.
And then with the reading, it's not terribly reading focused either. It's that oral storytelling.
Right.
That's the main focus of it is you want people discussing. Like this one right here, there is a reading focus for it. And a writing focus and an empathy focus. That's what it's for. If I'm teaching elementary students or middle school or high school students, I don't want, about like a different subject, I don't want a big tome that they need to read first, because that's not the goals. I don't want that.
Right.
Like, reading is great, but it's not necessary for this. So
Right.
we don't need a big chunky mechanics book in order to get to this.
And there are a lot of games that encourage kids to practice their reading and math skills. It's often an area where I think a lot of TTRPGs sort of are there. And that's wonderful. Like there's so many that are wonderful about storytelling and like literary analysis and all of those things. Like we're not here to tell you that they are not good.
Right.
We're just here to show that you don't have to have all of those things. And you can still use this in a subject where you may not think it's possible. Mm-hmm. One of the ones that I'm working on for my literacy class is Bias Hunt. And the final boss battle is they are presented with an argument that someone has written. Anita Hobby is a character who shows up a lot in my classes when I need to either steel man or straw man an argument. I need my kids to criticize her. Because she's a busybody who just writes a lot of letters to the newspaper. And Anita Hobby runs for elected office. And Anita Hobby gets real head up about things. And so Bias Hunt is Anita Hobby has written a proposal for something. And it changes every year because it doesn't matter. Like it's whatever the kids are interested in. A couple, like the first one I did was... Skibbity toilet is now a federal offense. It's felony. The concept is a felonious offense, and because it's, I don't know if you know middle schoolers, but boy howdy, that was popular with them. And so,
Yeah.
and
It's
yeah,
it's
And
gotten to the little kids too. My kids started coming home with it, and I'm like, "What
there's
is this?"
all these things in her article that are all of these logical fallacies and loaded language and cherry picking and all of these different things that are like she does a gish gallop, and they can go at the word level, the sentence level, the paragraph level, or the critique the whole piece, and the strength of the attack that they get is based on how complicated they choose. So like if using the word delinquents instead of teenagers is at the word level, that's like a basic attack. But if you say that, well, the organization of the piece is organized so that you think everything is building in intensity, but really the last body paragraph if you really look at them in isolation, she's like making it seem like this is a much bigger deal than it is because of the whole organization, which is a very top level, like that's a very nuanced critique of an argument that, if you are successful, is a really high level attack. And the goal is you have to find like 80% of the things that are in her article in order to beat her. So as a class, they all have to demonstrate mastery. But if you only try for like, there's a whole bunch of smaller things for the kids who like struggle to like be successful. But in order to do it, you can't just look for like words that seem naughty. Mm-hmm. So that is absolutely about like reading, writing, and argumentation. But like, no one rolls a dice at all. Mm-hmm. They don't roll any dice at all in that game.
And that's okay, because like it can be storytelling focused. Like, there's like I like decision tree kind of things, and that kind of gets into a little bit of like a decision tree, sort of like, do you find it yes or no, and things like that. Like that is a mechanic.
Yeah.
So
we are always going to tell you that playing D&D and playing like Monster of the Week and all of those games is really fun. We will play them with you. We've been more than happy to. When coming to any like thing that we put on, we are never going to make the suggestion of bringing something like that immediately into your classroom. While like we may promote and support like games that do a really good job, like our goal is the learning first, and if this thing doesn't support the learning, then it's not what we're gonna do. And a lot of times things that are intended for like group fun hobbyist play are not built from the ground up with education in mind. Just because you happen to learn something while playing it does not make something a good tool for a learning environment.
I do have one example of how to use D&D if it has already established with the group. So this would be like the case of an after-school group or a homeschooled like meetup group where they want to incorporate it. And this is the chem lab that I did the other day.
Yeah.
Where it is D&D. You're playing as your D&D characters in part of your campaign, and this is a side quest that can be done in about an hour, where they go get training from the Swamp Witch. So you're not actually using your D&D characters, but it is the setting matches. And she teaches you how to use pH strips. And you fill out a chart where you mark pH. So it is technically in D&D, but you have not used D&D. This is a pH lab at this point. From there, your second point of contact is maybe you do play D&D for a little bit, getting through this maze. There might be like an encounter or something, because this is part of your after school program when you have like 2-3 hours maybe to sit down. And then you get to the final door of the dungeon, and there's a pH matching puzzle that you now have to use what you learned from the Swamp Witch about pH testing strips in order to complete the puzzle. Again, this puzzle right here is not using D&D mechanics. It is the pH lab. And then once you complete that, you get into the last room, and you need to mix a potion for a spell or like neutralize toxic gas that is flowing around in the room or something, and that is another element of the pH lab. You're still not using your D&D skills. So it is possible to slot this into a D&D game, but the D&D part has nothing to do with the education because the mechanics are not built into that. If you're using D&D for education, it can be used very well for math and reading. And there is an English teacher that I have interviewed that does use it for that purpose, but has changed how it is introduced to the students in order to do that. Like there's writing assignments and whatnot associated with it.
Yeah.
So there is some intentionality to it. But when we're looking at subjects that are not built, it is difficult to do that. Like kind of in my experience and from when I've talked with people about it, is it takes a lot of work to get that to work for math and writing as well.
Yeah.
It can be done, but for something like science, it is not enough to just say, oh, there's a scientist, and when you get to the lab, you see pH strips, you read a book about what's in that. That's not enough. You need to have these interactive elements.
Yeah.
And these right here about the pH lab, that can be put into any system. It's not like specific to D&D. And so if you don't have a group that already knows the system, or you don't have like a couple hours to be able to do encounters in between, it's going to be a lot easier to use Caltrop Core, or Lasers and Feelings, or just roll a d6, see what happens, or to not even have mechanics and just have a story framed PH lab. Just out of curiosity, what subjects do you all get into for like education and whatnot?
Special education.
Yes.
Okay. So you're gonna be more like social emotional learning kind of stretch.
I do intervention in all areas.
Okay, understood. Do you have any special areas of interest?
I'm an educator.
Okay.
I have several family members there, so I was just
Yeah.
seeing and learn a little more about what they talk about.
Do you
That's great.
Yeah. I thank you for passing the info on to them.
Yeah.
So, do you have a particular subject that you'd like to tell them about?
I like science and engineering,
Okay.
but it kind of fits.
I'm like the mad scientist in the group.
I love it.
Like the group that we're with, everyone has degrees in like education and therapeutics and therapy and whatnot. And then I'm rolling in with like an engineering degree. And like I always wanted to be a teacher, but then my parents were like, no, teachers don't make money. Go be an engineer. And I was like, cool, I got my engineering master's. Let's go teach engineering. And like it's just kind of, I was like, I'm still gonna do my own thing. So like yeah, I put a lot of, okay, so like my games are Ranger Mech Squad, so you're park rangers with mechs. Solar Mech Squad, so you're astronauts with mechs. Critter Mech Squad, you're animals with mechs. Like, I got a robot game. It's all like tech stuff. So, actually, for getting into engineering.
Give you 1 second.
Yeah.
What is your area of expertise? What is your area of focus?
Sorry, I get distracted.
Oh, did we talk last year?
Like my jam. So, this is a educational TTRPG about problem solving. And so I love the engineering problem solving process, and this was one of my favorite things to teach in the college course that I had, because it's like the first time you give it to the students, most of them don't follow it, and they just come up with like weird ideas that are totally off base because they just like wrote something on the paper. And then you're like, okay, let's use the engineering problem solving process individually. Now let's use it as a group, and seeing like how it progresses is like, it makes my brain happy. So I made this game to walk through it. So it has basically some chaos has happened, and you need to like go through the process as a group, and each time you complete a step of it, you get some kind of bonus to your roll. Or like the draws. So this is the one where you're picking the tokens out of the cup, and it gets increasingly more random as the game progresses, which is always fun because it usually ends in like an explosion. But that's always like, you know,
We love an explosion.
it still solves the problem because there are no more chaos rats running around.
Fair.
So like it solves itself one way or another. You either catch the chaos rats or the tower blows up because you drew too many fire tokens on accident. So it's a fun way to like go through the process and see like how that can work, and it's all like broken down. So it's 5th grade science and writing class subjects. So it's science and writing are the two goals, because you are writing a report as you go through it. So it teaches report writing skills. And then I got one on here about teaching science and engineering in general and like how to break it down. So like using STEM focused settings. There's like a whole bunch of ideas about like how you can create settings to do it, theming, etc., and like a bunch of examples. So it's very possible to like integrate like science subjects as well. I think science and social studies are like the two really like big ones that we get asked about a lot.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like why I was like, we're gonna pull up all of these tabs.
I feel like
So-
in some ways with like a lot of math, like a lot of geometry, the
I do like the
problem solving.
geometry.
I do like the geometry as well, but I feel like it, you know, you could come up with like any type of fiction to be like, we
Yeah.
need to calculate triangles, we need to practice calculating triangles, like, you know, all of those problems we did were like, King Flippabler has to design a garden and it has to have this many square inches of this and this many square inches of that. We all did that project in school, right? Like in geometry class. And so like I feel like so much of that like is already there. And in a weird way, I feel like with the openness in some ways of science and social studies, the pedagogy for so long, this is me getting on my high horse again, I'm sorry, has been this focus on rote. Like, you know, you have to memorize the chemical, you have to memorize the equations, you have to memorize the formulas, you have to memorize names and dates. Like every year when
Yeah. Like, I want to play with that. I want to, like, I have so many ideas for doing, like, a periodic table of elements game and things like that, where it's like a tabletop RPG. That would be a lot of fun. You get to play with it, interact with it. It's color coded. Like, you can do symbol coding. You can do, like, hints about what they are. So you actually understand what all the chemicals in the table are instead of just memorizing where they're at and,
Right.
like, how many electrons they have.
Which means-
So, like, there's so many elements about it.
Right. And like for social studies, I think, I don't know if this is your experience, but like every year when I have parent night and I say I don't do names and dates history, and the kids are, and I have someone who's like,
Thank you.
what about states and capitals? And I'm like,
They should know all those by now.
what every person does what do you do right now? If whatever you are from in the country, if you were like, okay, I need to know the capital of like a Dakota, and you're like, crap, what do? You're gonna look it up. Like, we have such a finite amount of time on this earth, and we are gonna spend it memorizing. Yes.
So that's my focus. Let's get skill.
Right.
Or if it's part of something fun, like the States and Capitals song.
Right.
Like, my husband remembers that from when he was in, like...
Animaniacs.
Right, exactly. But it was Animaniacs. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
what I
But, like,
love,
that was what was needed to memorize it. It needed to be fun.
Right.
And engaging. And he just hums it in his head.
I
on
actually-
repeat.
I actually play the countries of the world one
Mm-hmm.
and see how many times my kids go, Germany now in one piece. What? Because like they've never lived in a world with a divided Germany, and the idea that like, you know, I am older than the current iteration of Germany as a country.
Same.
They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, Yugoslavia, not a thing. Nope. The Spanish Sahara, not a thing. And like, that is cool. But like, with that, we're getting a little off topic. But I think, you know, our goal for this is to give you a place to start thinking about how role play can enhance all sorts of different subjects, and how role play can blend social skills, practical skills, executive functioning skills, and not sacrifice that core academic content, and how it doesn't, a role play experience in a role play game in a classroom does not have to be an existing 27 book series. A lot of my role playing games that I play in my classroom are done and assessed, played back in the box in less than a week. My world religions game is 4 days of instructional time, and that's a pretty good chunk of that unit, because that's what they do. The fiction is light, the mechanics are light, it's a storytelling based game. They get in and they get out. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming. We do offer, if you are of a CEU collecting persuasion in your district, if you are in a school system, if you come to 4 of our sessions for the game-based education and therapy conference and fill out a feedback form, if you have negative feedback, I'll put up another I'm just kidding. I'll put up a QR code that leads you to a picture of a raccoon going, yeah. No. we want this to grow. We want this field to grow. We want the outreach for this to grow. We want to get more teachers, librarians, therapists, advocacy groups, interested parties to this, to bring high quality instructional materials to kids and connect educators with alike passions, to move the needle to helping our kids connect with each other, connect in an authentic and real way. And that's what we got.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you for
So,
coming.
If you'd like to, yeah.
We love this stuff. And if you
Yeah.
see us tomorrow, we do not have sessions tomorrow. The conference ends
I have
tonight at 10
one.
o'clock. You have one.
But it's not associated with the.
It's
big-
not us.
with this.
Steph has a session 10 o'clock tomorrow.
It's in the afternoon. Huh?
Are you DMing for
No, I have one in the afternoon on creating inclusive game spaces in the community. So it's a panel, and then yeah, my brain's really fried right now because I have had 9 scheduled events, and
Yep.
this is number 8 out of 9, and then
We have tonight and you have tomorrow.
yeah. So sorry if I'm like there's like a slight delay in the response at the moment.
Require my action
Yeah. We have an
Yeah.
applied game jam tonight at 7:30.
Yes. Yeah.
Which we are running, and we got bits donated, which is very exciting.
That's cool.
So we can do board games, card-based games, or RPGs, and we'll be around helping people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so if you have anyone who's
What
interested
time is
in
it and where?
7:30, it's up here
Okay, in these rooms.
in these rooms. Yeah. Come make a game with people. We'll be around to give feedback and help and like co-create with you, and it's going to be a buck wild time.